Declare board meeting to order.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Under roll call, all four of us are here.
3.5.
I have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any additions or corrections?
One minor correction, Mr. Chairman, under the consent agenda, on CA3 and CA4 is where the motion is being read for the approval of the consent agenda, and it probably should have been under CA1. I think that's just a procedural thing, so we can address it by simply calling for a motion when we get to the consent agenda.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public comment. Anyone from the public who wishes to testify? First on the agenda, we have a presentation. Julie?
Yeah. Well, I hope you all remember me. My name is Julie Desimoni. I'm a partner with Moss Adams and your lead partner on your audit for the fiscal year 2014 audit. And we're getting ready to start our audit procedures, so I just wanted to take a couple minutes of your time today, just talk about what we're planning to do for this year's audit and get any thoughts from you if you have any on the audit process. We are our service team this year. We're continuing the same group that came out here last year with one new addition. We have a new staff on it. We always like to bring in some new fresh eyes on the audit, but also give you continuity of people that understand and know and have been with CRW for the last year or so. So that service team has remained pretty much the same as last year. I need to let you know as we get ready to planning if we have any concerns over our independence or any services that we performed during the year. We did not perform any other services during the year other than the audit, so there's no concerns with independence. And we do check with our team and make sure that there's no independence concerns throughout the year. So as we get ready to start the audit, we follow a risk-based approach to our audit, to where we want to spend the majority of our time on the riskiest areas. And I thought I would talk a little bit about what those areas are. That doesn't mean we ignore the rest of the company or the organizational flow, but this is where if we had 8 hours to spend the audit, this is probably where we'd spend 5 or 6 of those hours in. We spend quite a bit of time on revenue and billing. We want to understand and make sure that as meters are read and as everything flows through, and it's mostly electronic based, but as everything comes through here and the exceptions are done, that they're done in an appropriate fashion. So we look at the controls covering that. We look at the changes of revenues and coupled with some of the board's decisions made in the past year on rates and where those are at. And we come to an understanding of your entire revenue process and your revenue flow all the way to cash collections. We spend quite a bit of time on capital assets. It is by far probably the most but it has the most inputs of any other area in your work order process, because a lot of inputs come from the payroll cycle, from the disbursement cycle, and just from journal entries and different things that go on throughout the year. So we spend quite a bit of time on how the information gets put into the capital asset structure and work in process. And then we look to make sure that those projects that are being completed are in line with what the board wants them to, what the board is authorized to be completed throughout the year. We take a look at cash going out of the organization, disbursements and payroll, make sure that what's going out is appropriate. And then also applied to that, there's about 13 different audit standards or audit procedures that we have to perform over Oregon minimum standards. So that's done through state law, and we'll issue a report at the end on Oregon minimum standards. So we take a look at probably the largest two pieces of that is contracting and budgeting. Now, in our audit process, in every audit process, we do have to consider fraud and whether fraud exists. So we do have multiple procedures over fraud. Specifically, we have to interview people outside of the accounting department, which is actually a very good thing for the auditors to get to know the organization as a whole. And then we'll look at the risks and areas of risk, and we look at specific audit procedures to look to see whether we have any concerns over fraud or non-compliance risk. Our field work is going to start on the week of October 6th. The due date from the state, so these have to be completed and issued to the state by December 31st. But we plan on getting that done well in advance. So we plan on coming back at the November board meeting. So if you don't hear from us between now and the November board meeting, what that's telling you is the audit is going exactly as we had planned it and as we have told you today how it will go. So we do plan on being back here to present those results at the November board meeting. And in those results, you'll be getting our audit opinion over your financial statements. You'll be getting an OMS, or the Oregon Minimum Standards report. And we'll also provide to you a letter to those charged with governance of the required communications, of which I'll go over in person as well at that time. Now, in looking at your, the auditing and the accounting standards and everything that came on this year, there is one new accounting standard that is coming into play this year. It's GASB 65. Last year, we changed the terminology of what used to be called a balance sheet and came with statement of net assets, or statement of net, assets. Now it's called the statement of net position. It's hard to remember all the, I know. It's because, we're going to talk about it another time. It's a long time. And we had to reshape some of the things. Everything stayed on the balance sheet last year, but moved positions, or I guess on the statement of net position. This year, there is a requirement for a couple of things, or one more significant thing to come off the books, and that's your debt expense, that's been deferred. But luckily for CRW, there isn't a significant amount of it, so there's not going to be a required restatement for that. We'll just get those off the books in the current year. So really, you won't see a significant impact from that statement this year. Moving forward to next year, I just wanted to let you, and I'll talk about this in more detail because I'll actually probably have more information in the November board meeting. But there is a pretty significant standard coming down the pipe that you'll start hearing about next year, and that's GASB 68. That's the new pension standards, where the Oregon PERS plan is currently trying to develop what their net pension liability is, and that's pretty much what's owed to retired employees minus what are the assets held in trust is their net pension liability. Then in 68, so starting next year, that gets broken down to the individual employers. We have yet to see what information is going to be provided to employers. One of our partners from our firm is actually helping in the implementation, or he's one of the consultants for the implementation of those standards and trying to get information out to the employers. But what everybody expects is this is going to be a pretty large number. It will require...
Is that coming from the Secretary of State's office?
No, that will be coming from the company that audits. Well, that will be coming from the PERS plan directly. Yeah,
via the Secretary of State's office.
I think that Marina and Company is who now audits the pension plan, PERS. I think they changed it.
Right.
The requirements come. Oh,
bingo.
So the requirement, sorry.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out where the mandate's coming from.
Oh, sorry, no, federal. It's the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. So this isn't
to the states?
To the individual, yeah. So to any.
And are they sending any money with it?
Good, no.
Yeah, of course not.
No, this is a.
This is
truly. I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
Right.
This
Anytime you increase the bar, it costs us more money.
But that's true.
Yeah.
That is true. There will definitely be a cost associated with this on several different levels, from the state level and what gets funded through you, and we'll be required to do some additional audit procedures. So we will let you know as soon as we know more information about what, how far the state's going in their audit, or how far the PERS plan will go, and how much we might or might not need to do depending on what the PERS plan. But unfortunately, I can't tell you what that is yet because we don't have any of that information. I just know that you're going to start hearing about it quite a bit, so I wanted to let you know. This is something that every multi-employer plan, or every plan, governmental pension plan in the United States is having to follow.
So was this something that Congress did, or was this an administrative?
No, you're required to follow Governmental Accounting Standards Board. That's the Accounting Standards Board, and that's the one who made this decision. So it's the federal, for any governmental entity within the United States, it's the Accounting Standards Board you're required legally to follow. So it's them. Yeah.
Just one question, you talked about capital asset structure. Does that mean or include how we value our capital assets?
It does.
Thank you.
Yes, it does. And what standards are required under a neighborhood or those are the water accounting standards
I
board.
want to be clear.
Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
That's interesting.
So that's what I have for you. My question to you is if there's any, other than what I've mentioned right now, is there any questions or concerns you have about either the audit or any areas that you'd like us to look at a little bit differently than what I've given you a very high-level overview of?
Any more questions? Nope. Okay, thank you.
I'll see you in November.
Okay. Ken?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This is a report from the executive session held on August 14th, 2014. The board met in closed session to discuss with our attorney a variety of court cases. They are as follows. The Court of Appeals Employee Records case, the elections contest, the Kehoe case, a federal case by a former commissioner, a bar complaint, and the right-of-way issue with Oregon City, and I believe that covers it.
Thank you. Under action items, number 1, Ken?
Just a moment, Mr. Chairman. This is the first reading of Resolution 03-2015 by title only, amending board policy, section 1.12, computer policy.
Do we have a motion? I'll read by title only.
I'll move to read by title only, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Waiting for Could you officially read it by
Oh,
title?
I'm sorry, I thought Ken was doing.
I was waiting for direction. I didn't know who you wanted to do it.
Clackamas River Water Resolution 03-2015. This is a resolution amending Clackamas River Water's board policy as section 1.12. And it's whereas a regular meeting was called by the Board of Commissioners of Clackamas River Water on October 16th, and whereas pursuant to the revisions of ORS 192-640, a notice of said regular meeting and the purpose thereof was given by email, Clackamas River Water website, and or telephone to the members of the governing body, the news media, which has requested notice, and the general public in accordance with the requirements of said statute. And whereas after consideration, the board finds that Clackamas River Water, the board policy, section 1.12, computer policy, now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Commissioners of Clackamas River Water. For the public who don't have any idea what we're talking about, what this is a policy. It's an amendment to an existing policy. As you know, that the original policy was about computers, and we know that there's a multiplicity of electronic devices that are out there, and this one specifically talks about the district's obligation to our commissioners to keep them informed. And we know that some of our commissioners now are using tablets versus computers, so we decided we thought it was in the best interest to be clear that this meant any of the electronic devices that might be there in the present or in the future. So that's really the intent of the policy.
Any public comment? Not, we'll take this up next meeting?
Yep.
Yes.
One more time.
The second meeting, next meeting. Project acceptance, Adam.
Mr. Chairman, do you wish a motion on the floor?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move the board approve and authorize the board president's signature of the notice of acceptance for the Cargo Bridge Transmission Main Phase 1 North Intertie Project CIP 10-5108, which establishes the project completion date as September 11th, 2014.
That's the day.
Bingo.
Go ahead, Adam.
We need a second. We need a second, Mr.
Oh.
Chairman.
Oh, second.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Well, thank you. I'll keep it pretty brief. As in the write-up, I just summarized the project. We did complete construction in July for the first phase of the Carver Bridge intertie on the north side. We tied into the Sunrise water line, their 12-inch ductile iron main, and ran that line about 175 feet down Springwater Road towards the bridge. And that now is actually connected to the bridge water line that the county's contractor is building. So that is nearing completion. They've still got some work to do, but they're getting prepared to complete testing on that line, and that will get us completely across the Carver Bridge. And then we'll move on towards future phases where we'll start bringing the line down Patton Road and into our Redland pressure zone. So the project went pretty well. It was night work as stipulated by the ODOT permit, working out of the Carver intersection there on Highway 224. So within a period of about 4 nights, the contractor completed the work under budget, within budget, and things went pretty well. Let's see if any other information on that I want to bring up. That's pretty much it. Any questions you have for me?
Thank you. We have ability to get water across the bridge now.
Thank you. We're on our way. I appreciate it.
Under public comment, and on to the public. We want to thank Sunrise for cooperating with us on this issue. Any more comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the consent agenda, items CA1, CA2, CA3, and CA4.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Information report. Engineering, yeah.
I received an email from the City of Oregon City concerning this project. That was after the board packet. Wonderful. Not expecting anybody to read it. This is really for the work session we were going to discuss. Here already read. Good evening, gentlemen. Probably you might want to take a look at Exhibit A, the map, in the board packet. There's a property within Oregon City, outside our boundary, that is interested in having development occur. I did summarize the basic outline that it's a development. We're trying to build the city standards. And what's happening is the city has water, they have a 16-inch main there, but they don't have pressure adequate to supply their minimum 40 PSI. About 800-900 feet just south of the property along Beaver Creek Road, we have a pump station that supplies a higher pressure zone to our Beaver Creek zone.
Just a second. This property is directly across from the high school.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right where Myers Road comes in?
Yeah.
This property right there.
And then a little to the south.
South and north of there. So they've been working on this development for several years, and they came to loggerheads with Oregon City because of the water pressure issue. They were not allowed to build a pump station.
That's different.
And to meet 40 PSI, they looked for alternatives. And they know about our district and they know we have different pressure zones, so they approached us and said, could you provide, could CRW. So we started talking with Oregon City and with the developer, and we came to a conclusion with some modeling that it is possible for us to supply water to this development. What I'm proposing tonight is just, if you have questions about, I'm not going to go through all the particulars, because what I propose is I think we have a work session on the 22nd of September.
Yes.
I'd like to present a little bit more detail of the demand and what they're proposed to build. What I'm bringing to you, just pay attention, you've probably heard about it through either city notices or other type of land use notices that Oregon City put out, that our name was mentioned several times. So I wanted to bring to the board that we've been talking probably for about a year and a half about this, what ifs. No promises been made. We put conditions down just so we protected our interest in the letters to Oregon City and the land use comments, and to Evergreen LLC, which is the development company. Before I proceed too far down that road, basically, I wanted to make sure that CRW would be interested in serving outside our boundary. Now, probably two things would happen. One is, this is exterritorial, but that's probably, and in our rules, the board has to approve that. The other thing, this would require an IGA water service agreement. Because, like we have at Myers Road or South End Road, we buy water from Oregon City through a master meter and serves our customers. In this case, Oregon City would want to serve one of their customers with a master meter off our system. So it's just reversed.
So this IGA is from a city who I had lunch with a month ago, who said they weren't going to be signing any more agreements with anybody.
Mr. Lewis and I, we met and we had several conversations, and Evergreen has put a lot of money up to develop this.
Yeah,
And we have a very nice
engineering
plan, and it does meet their long-term plan for the development style of the Beaver Creek concept plan. So really,
That's going on south, right?
all from Loader Road,
Yeah.
all the way down to the, including the golf course area.
Right.
Okay, that's the area of the plan, and then all the way up to Eugene, from Beaver Creek Road out.
Which is just past the golf course.
Just, well, one small lot past the golf course. It doesn't quite get to Henry Street Road.
Yeah.
So, they're trying to look for solutions. They have two issues for the development. Sewer is one of them, because there's no major collector sewer collector there. So they have to work through that one. And then, of course, water is an issue for them.
Yeah, because the sewer line stops at the mini storage facilities there in Beaver Creek Road.
It's quite a distance.
Yeah, it is a long
For
way.
a single lot to develop maybe a large, I don't know what size collector they would have to put in. So, right now, I believe I've asked it to be on the agenda for discussion, and it really is something that the board would want to consider.
Speaking for myself, I would say, yes, we should consider it.
I agree with considering the situation, yeah.
Dave,
I have some reservations.
you have some reservations?
I do. We probably need to talk in a work session. I'll do some more digging, but I've already read this, okay, and I've had time. And in fact, over a month ago, when I saw the blue sign, I was coming home from the open house. And we're driving up Beaver Creek Road, and I see this development sign, and I hadn't seen it there before, so it must have gone off like on Friday. And so I got home and I went online to their planning website, and I read the entire engineering report that has been submitted to the city on this development. And so, in light of all of the issues we've been having, it seems like, just on the first cut, we might be being taken advantage of. I hope not, but that's kind of how it feels to me. I just know.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time,
I
but I
know.
think we should be given the opportunity to investigate it, discuss it, and come to a reasonable solution to the situation.
And then the other thing, so I have two concerns. One, because I have, anyway, what's the past history of the district with providing water services to properties that are not in the district?
successful?
I mean, no, just, have we granted all of them? Do we pick and choose?
Well, we just discussed one, or we did the last meeting about Milwaukee.
Right.
Surveyed them. And,
We had that emergency thing down off of Ferguson where we helped that property owner out for a little while.
Yeah,
We
we're
also
still
provided
and
water to Johnson City for
Sunrise.
many years.
Yeah, right,
that's at Sunrise is outside our district.
right.
And we're a joint venture with them, so it isn't anything unusual, I don't think it's anything new. I think that the problem here that you're expressing is that there's some sort of a stigma between PRW and Oregon City in terms of joint ventures. And I'll have to agree with you, there is a little bit of a smell coming out, but hopefully we can work through it.
Well, it seems like they always turn the tables when we try to work in good faith, and then it ends up biting us in the tail, and I guess I don't appreciate that.
I guess my comment would be, we have other agreements with Oregon City that, to the best of my knowledge, have not been breached. Usually the conflicts have been when we have not had agreements. In line with our stated goal almost 2 years ago of increasing our customer base, this certainly seems to move in that direction. It would increase our customer base. The location seems to be a reasonable location for continued development. It's not like some big giant leapfrogging situation into the rural areas or something. So with all of those considered, and the fact that we have some successful intergovernmental agreements with Oregon City, I think we really should take the time to look at this seriously. I'm confident that our attorneys and our general manager could negotiate an agreement. And in the final analysis, I would not want to be the organization that stands in the way of the developer doing something that's actually a reasonable development. I'm not a big fan of lots of development, no matter where or anything like that, but when there is a reasonable plan for an appropriate piece of property in a reasonable area, then I think in good conscience you try to support what the developer wants to do. This seems to be the case, so to me it merits a work session where we discuss it in depth and then we can give direction to staff.
So in light of the conversation that I had last month with the Public Works Director, where I urged him to get back to you pronto on the hydraulic study that we want to do jointly, is that moving along at any kind of pace that's going to get it done in this budget year?
We are scheduled to meet on the 29th to start going through those issues. Are we going to get it done in the next 9 months? Time will tell.
Don't know.
But the point, we will meet, we're starting that process.
Because I see, I hate to play politics, but I think we have to move this entity. I think that, for me, the hydraulic study, all of these development issues are connected. There is connection between everything that happens, because they'll drop us like a hot potato when they don't need us anymore. End of story.
Just two statements would be the property owner came to us, okay, and he would like to meet that night and be part of the process. Is that acceptable? To have him come and present his picture and his voice?
I would appreciate that myself, personally.
Yes.
But I don't think it's appropriate for him to spend his time there with us for the total meeting.
Oh, no, what I'll do is when we set the agenda, I'll let him know what time.
Yeah.
And if it's a half hour, 45 minutes, whatever slotted time, I'll let him know. He comes from Seattle, so he was gonna come tonight for a 15-minute discussion, and I offered it to him, of course. But I said, let's get it on a work session first, and then come and present if the board is interested in providing this kind of service.
Now, what end of the work session would be more appropriate for the?
I think typically when we have guests come, we try to get them on the front end of the agenda so they can come and get their issue, but that's really the board's call on that.
No, I agree myself. I agree with it. I don't know about the rest.
Yeah.
And the other issue is, I know you probably read the literature and the letters and all that. The developer knows that he will be picking the tab for all the improvements, engineering, staff time, and the water that goes through the meter will be reimbursed to us. And if it's through a water service agreement, that's revenue.
So
There's
the
no
revenue generated by our master meter to that customer,
Mhm.
From that customer.
from that customer, is added to the right-of-way fee?
That's a question.
Not connected.
That's something we were gonna discuss at the
They're
session.
not connected. The water line that gets built between our master meter and the property will be an Oregon City water line.
If you calculate it by footage.
The water line will be Oregon City line, not related to a right-of-way fee, because it's not our line.
Get it right
Well, that's what the idea is.
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah, they were on the same page
And
with
as we
that.
talked about this area, the Henry C. Road area, this is a higher level of elevation and pressure zone for the future. Oregon City does have a plan for a reservoir out that way.
They just built one a few years ago.
20,
Didn't they, that, the one across,
Henry's.
it's on the north side of Henry's.
Yeah.
20 years ago.
Yeah, 20 years ago.
It can't be that long.
Yeah.
I worked on it.
Yeah, no, it's about.
I worked on It's been 20 years ago.
Well, they have that, and they can't use it.
No, that is the same elevation as the Oregon City pressure zone.
Yeah,
So
same-
the Henry doesn't
Same
help.
elevation, well, it's just a little bit higher than Mountain View.
Yeah.
So they do need a small pressure zone out there to take care of their future urban reserve and UGB area. And that happens to be the same approximate pressure zone that we have at Beaver Creek. So I think we've mentioned a little bit about possibly sharing a reservoir in the future.
Yeah.
That's to be seen. And that's part of the engineering study.
Yeah.
Is that an opportunity for both of us to increase our storage capacity in our pressure zone and share costs? Potential savings for both of us.
Yeah, well, what the reservoir over off of Fulton,
Yeah, Barlow
a
Crest.
joint venture,
Yes,
has that been successful
yes,
and kind of hassle-free, hopefully?
pretty much.
Yeah. Well, pretty much. What's the other?
Oh, pretty much meaning that we have pretty high pressures in that area that takes care of Oregon City, and we've had some high pressure complaints. Because we at Barlow Crest all the way up to High Heights is, I mean, we're it's high pressure, 140, 150 PSI. And that's high for a home. So everybody has to have reducers, pressure reducers on their homes. Well, when they fail, they own them, but they come to us because they blow a hot water tank or pull off tap hot water. They come to us expecting us to take care of it for them, and that's not how we're set up.
Oh, we don't maintain that. Oh, I
We do not.
thought we did.
No, we do not. That is the homeowner's responsibility.
Yeah, that's after the meter.
But the line itself, I guess.
It's been hassle-free. The reservoir's in good
Yeah.
shape, the pump station worked great,
Yeah.
the transmission main have worked great.
If something goes wrong in the line, do we repair it, maintain it?
We share the cost of the repair.
Oh.
The way it kind of reads, and I'll have to take this one, I believe Oregon City takes the lead, but we would be sharing costs on repairs.
Do they have the ability
Yes.
to take the lead?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we do.
The reason, Mr. Chairman, of putting this on the agenda, after the last meeting, I think Commissioner McNeil and several of you had contacted me about this particular development. And about the same time that happened, we began to start getting more formal communications. Before we get too far down the road, we just wanted to get kind of a sense of the board as to whether or not we needed to put a lot more staff time into it or not, and that was the reason for putting it on the agenda today. With the understanding that if the board wanted to pursue this further, we would talk about it in work session. There's one additional piece of information that has surfaced, and it's tied to the right-of-way fee and the concerns that we've had about statements made by principals within Oregon City, and whether or not we could rely on those statements for purposes of an agreement And we've been advised through council that we can't. That the only person that can speak for Oregon City is the board. And that's one of the reasons why I think you see the IGA reference here in addition to the exterritorial part. And so essentially this would be an agreement between their board and our board. And of course it would be facilitated by staff, but their council was very clear that their public works person does not have the authority to speak for the city. Don't understand it, but that's what it said.
So they don't delegate?
Well,
Apparently not.
You can't imagine.
and in light of Dave's concerns, is based on conversations he's had with some of the principals in Oregon City, I think his point is well taken that all I's should be dotted and all T's should be crossed carefully if we do an agreement. But the agreements that we have in place appear to have been honored. So as long as we make sure that our needs are properly represented and reflected in the contract, then I think this could be a positive thing, and that would be the approach I would take. But we would look very carefully at crossing those T's and dotting those I's, because clearly casual conversations don't carry much weight.
And so I don't look at this as a single agreement. Clearly, this is but a drop in the bucket of what, for the next foreseeable future, if I'm reading what's going on with development, is going to be apartments are going to flourish like they did in the late 70s, again, 85, 86. Every time we have one of these economic cycle things, a certain number of people afford to buy houses, the rest of them have to rent. And so there's this huge cyclical thing that happens. And so I don't know whether this district is ready to backfill all of that stuff. I mean, I'm not talking about just Beaver Creek Road. I'm talking, it could happen out on South End Road, it could happen on Leland Road, it could happen in lots of places where they may or may not have sewer, water, storm, whatever it takes to do that. And so how do we manage that? I think there needs to be kind of a more global look at what we're getting into instead of kind of a myopic look at just this one development. I certainly appreciate what this development has spent in money for engineering and planning and purchasing the property and all of those things, but I clearly remembered several times in this history of Oregon City where they've had to declare moratoriums on construction because they didn't have the wherewithal to serve the annexation. So, I don't want to get involved in that mess, so, but, sure, be glad to sell them some water, but what does it mean going forward? Okay. Work session.
Go ahead.
I'm done.
Oh, okay. You're done.
We'll make sure it's on the agenda.
Thanks, Bob.
So that the record shows that we have an extensive email from Oregon City on this issue. Carol, financial report.
Thank you. Good evening. The first thing I'm going to present to you today is a report on our debt covenant compliance. And this is a requirement that I need to do every year within 90 days of the end of the fiscal year. So I need to report to you by September 28th. So here, timely report. What the bond covenants require is that we have ratios of revenue to the annual debt service when we include our SDC revenue of 1.25 or 1.25 times the annual debt service. And if we take out the SDCs, it's got to be equal to 1. This is what's required by the bondholders. And if we're talking about going out for debt in the future, it's a good idea to be significantly above that. If you're just barely meeting those minimums, the rating agencies don't look at you particularly favorably. Well, this year, including the SDCs, our ratio is 602% instead of 125%. So we met the threshold handily. When you take out the SDCs, then we're at 563. So we did a really good job this year. We're in a really good place. Here, this is kind of small, but you have this in front of you as well. This kind of shows the ratios that we've had over the last 5 years. Now, these are unaudited financials, and they know when we report this to the board that it is unaudited, but these numbers are not likely to change significantly. So certainly we will still meet the debt covenants.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Like, for 2010, where it says 1.71, and you said that's an unaudited number.
No, all of the numbers prior are audited numbers. It's the 2014 is unaudited.
So everything else has been audited?
Yes.
That's what I was trying to
Yes.
clarify. Thank you.
Everything else is audited.
Okay.
One of the reasons the numbers are so high this year compared to last year, there's a couple of reasons. First, in our gross revenues, we had a one-time infusion of cash from PGE that was part of the emergency generator project. So that made the revenues higher. We also, because of our rate increases, we were moving towards that board policy of sending larger dollar amounts to the capital reserve fund. And so we earned those revenues, but they're not just sitting there to cover expenses. We're putting some of those in the savings account. And then the third thing is you'll see that the debt service for this year, the structure of our bonds had us pay a lower amount this year than we did last year. We're, $200,000 less than the debt we paid last year. So when you're dividing by that number, you're going to come out with a bigger ratio number. So are there any questions about the debt covenants?
So why was the debt service so much less?
It's just the way the bond was structured. When we did the refunding, they kind of preloaded some of the principal payments.
Oh,
And so
okay.
this year, we just had a smaller principal payment.
Okay, right.
Next year, it's
Okay.
smaller, then it creeps back up.
Yeah, right, I understand.
So now looking at the accounts receivable aging, again, because we did move our commercial customers to the opposite months as the residential customers, it's still a little bit hard to compare over time. But what it's done for us is improve our cash flow so that we're a little bit more even. But at August 31st, right after doing the residential bills, our outstanding balance was nearly 1.3 million. Today, we have had lots of collections coming in. Today, the balance is about 838,000. So then looking at our cash and investment position, as of August 31st, combining our general checking with the local government investment pool, we have $7.9 million. So now I've got some graphs, and again, this, usually 2 months out, we would be talking about July activity, but because we do so many entries on June and getting ready for the audit, I report on June again. Next month, I'll show you July and August both, so that we can get that caught up. But now we've done a lot of our adjusting entries. So we have accrued our revenue, our unbilled revenue, which included some commercial accounts because we billed them in May, so we had the whole month of June and part of May from the reads. And then we've also accrued a little bit on the residential accounts because we read the meters in June, in the middle of June, so we've got to figure out how much might they have used till the end. So we've got all those accruals in, so this is our revenue, and here's our expenditures. And again, this chart shows all of the funds, so we do have the expenditures for, this purple area right here is the CIP expenditures, and because of the generator project, we did spend significantly more in that category in the last year than we had in the recent previous years.
So just as a reference, if we would remove those costs, this generator-wise, would we be kind of like where we were in 2012?
Probably closer to 2013. We expended a lot of
Oh, really?
our resources, not just dollar resources, but time. And so
Yeah.
we did have some other smaller projects,
Sure.
but
Okay.
the majority of the CIPs.
In order to
expenditures-
compare, you
yeah,
kind of have to throw out that
Yeah.
weird one.
Yeah. And so here's the general fund comparison for the prior 2 years. And again, these numbers are pretty much done. These are close to our final numbers. And that's all I have for this evening. I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Yeah, I noticed in the general fund schedule of expenditures that in every department we came in under budget, with one exception, it's that pesky engineering department. No, I'm just kidding. It was really very good.
It's gotta be
how
asphalt.
how well
He's out there
everybody has
building
done.
stuff.
And I do
Well-
understand all the engineering that had to be done with the project, so.
And we also, that goes into actually the CIP fund, so it's not that. But as we were approaching the end of the year, we had some opportunities in the engineering department for some training and things like that. The engineering budget is so small compared to everybody else's.
Yeah.
But we had some opportunities that we said, we do have enough room in the appropriation level that we might as well go ahead and take care of these things now and get that training.
I just wanted to give Bob.
Anything else?
No more questions, thank you. Manager's report. Mr. Orr.
Yes. There in the table of contents, you'll see that we had provided to the board several things that we had committed to do that we plan to talk about in a work session on the 22nd. One is that we had committed to the board, and more specifically Commissioner McNeil, that we would have an incident action plan prepared. You'll see that up on the graphics to your left there that we handed out today. There's also has the incident command assignments listing and in the incident organization chart, so you have those things. And we wanted to get it to you today so you'd have an opportunity to review that prior to the 22nd. So that's in there.
One question I could, this is one of three?
There's three documents that you should have. One is probably A1 and A2 should be in your hand, in the materials that you have, in the board materials. And what I noticed, yeah, right here, A1 and A2. There, sorry about that. But I noticed when I was looking that we didn't include the IAP, and that was what you were really
No,
interested
in looking at this, it says that there are three scenarios, that's what it said. So you're planning to do three IEPs for three different scenarios?
Well, we only did one, we only provided one for today.
Right,
But
right.
there are three.
Yeah, but ultimately,
There would be actually more than that, we wanted to get that to you because I think what you were really interested in, at least what you had articulated, is you wanted to see how it was put together.
there are three very critical forms that are missing, and we can talk about that in the thing, but we'll just do that. And then the other question I have, because that's the reason I asked the question, there's three, is if this is an IEP for a landslide, it could be anywhere in the district.
Right.
How many, you need to kind of know, in order to be able to evaluate this, you need to know how many operational periods you're talking about. Until you know how many operational periods this event's going to generate, you don't know how to evaluate this. So
And that's a
figure that
draft.
out.
And so,
Yeah, right, not a problem. I'm just saying that that's,
Okay. Got it.
yeah.
The other documents that we have in there, or there's some articles under D that I know that you might have some interest in. And now I'll get into the more specific part of the manager's report. But I wanted to call your attention to that. I think most of you have heard by now that the U.S. District Court has ruled on I think the final lawsuit that we had, and they have ruled in the district's favor. We have provided you with copies of that judge's preliminary decision. I've had several questions asked to, because this opinion is written in more legalese than most opinions that have been put out there. Essentially, what the judge has done, who is essentially a magistrate, and essentially he's writing this opinion for the district judge. And so you'll notice that he used words with prejudice and without prejudice. I think it's important to address that. With prejudice means that those are issues that cannot be raised again unless the complaining party were to go to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, because the Ninth Circuit is the circuit that governs western United States, and that's in San Francisco. Without prejudice means that there is some potential to maybe try to bring those again in state court, but the likelihood of that happening, given how the judge has written the order, is pretty minor. The other concept that I think that is important to look at in that opinion is that the board did address the issue of the CRW board ability to self-manage itself. And so the board of conduct document that it was adopted by the board is an important document, because the court has essentially said that the board has the ability to regulate or to introduce regulations and how it intends to manage its your peers, your fellow members. And I think the other issue that was kind of a new one for me is that the court ruled that as public officials, we don't have in our official capacity free speech rights. That essentially, when we're operating within our official capacities, that's really where that we don't have those protections. The only way that you free speech protections under the U.S. Constitution is as an individual, not as a board member operating in your official capacity. And so I thought that was pretty insightful for the court to have called attention to that. The next thing that we have is that the Court of Appeals, the Stowe-Reeves discussion, I think we had that in executive session, and Commissioner Humbertson has already talked about that, so I don't need to go into that here. We had, as you know, and I think all of you attended, the 50th anniversary that we had at the treatment plant. We had a lot of surrounding entities, Sunrise, and I think we had the mayor of Oregon City and a few other political representatives show up for it. From what I've heard, it was well received because our plant is 50 years old, and I think it's really important to kind of give accolades to our staff, because I thought that they did an excellent job also coming in on their day off to put on that event. I thought that was to be commended for that. So, the other thing that we've had as part of our contract with Wilson Air Guard, that they provide an annual inspection, OSHA inspection. It's kind of like a pre-OSHA audit, I guess. I wouldn't call it an inspection. It's more of an audit that really kind of goes around our entire facility and identifies those areas within our operations that they think we need to be paying attention to. Their conclusion, while there were some minor administrative things that needed to occur, that there were no major violations discovered in their walkthrough. So I think that is good. The next item, and you notice that there's an asterisk there, and we've basically informed the board that that's really letting you know that these are things that are goals for the general manager, and this one is the Sunrise CRW integration. And what I tried to do this time around that's a little bit different is bulletize those areas where we have been working. And the first area, you can see there's the equipment sharing meeting, and we're continuing to meet on those issues. The second one being the emergency management. We've had Mr. Hathorn, myself, and our emergency manager, Don Bunyard, we've met and talked about expectations. The second area is the administrative departments. They've gotten together and are working on issues. I think they've had, 3 meetings at this point. And we've had meetings with the financial staff. I think we've had several with the financial staff. And we've also had meetings with the water treatment plant representatives to talk about how we can share resources there. And we've also had a meeting with the general manager, Wade, and myself, and HR Services, Ms. Campbell, to talk about how we would begin to support those functions with HR Services. So while we haven't completed anything, we're well underway, and we have set out a target of, by December, having more specific planning that is kind of delineating what and how we're going to share resources. And it looks like the staffs are engaged at this point and doing a good job discussing. We also then had a meeting with Tyler Technologies, and Tyler is the parent company of Eden, which is our financial software system. And we had already met, as you remember before, with Sunnybrook, which is
Springbrook.
Springbrook. I always say Sunnybrook. I don't know. Springbrook, about a couple months ago. And so this is for us to kind of meet with Tyler to see what's happening in their land. One of the things that we heard about from them is that it's very probable that Microsoft is not going to support the Eden product anymore. And so that's even more impetus for us to make a decision and move on. And as you know, we are kind of shadowing the implementation at Sunrise. And we've also talked about having our CFO kind of move over and help over there. And that I think that'll give us a kind of a double advantage, because we'll be in a better position to make the assessment when we do. So we're planning to budget for some kind of software upgrade in the next fiscal year. So we need to be ready to do that. We've met, this is see another asterisk, we met with Milwaukee, and this is probably the 3rd meeting, I believe, 3rd or 4th meeting, because there's also been various side meetings with Milwaukee, and those sessions are going extremely well. The CFOs have gotten together, and one of the things that Milwaukee has talked with us about is how do we handle billings in the northern part of their district, given that they have sewer, but they don't really control the water, and so that's one of the things that we're expecting to be covered in the IGA. The engineering departments have had discussions on some of the hydraulic modeling, and I think they're going to have more discussions before we meet again, and that's moving. We're looking at field equipment. That's probably going to be handled in a standalone IGA. They like the way that the present agreement is structured, so it'll probably be incorporated by reference, but it would be a standalone agreement. The Harmony Road, in order to ascertain if the few residents who reside there can be billed by CRW, but to continue to receive water from Milwaukee, so we're going to be looking at that in this agreement. The other thing that they're interested in talking to us about is contracting for lab services, and so that's on the agenda. And the other thing that Milwaukee explained to us is that they have a citizen advisory committee. And so anything that has to do with utilities and the like has to be presented through their citizens advisory committee before the IGA comes to city council, is what I understand. And so that may slow up the process a little bit on the front end, but they indicated that they were going to start the notification process to let the citizen advisory committee know what they're working on. The other thing is that I was invited by the city of Portland to sit on their RFP committee. They are trying to bring in an outside entity to review their wholesale water agreements with all of their fellow districts, and they want to bring in a resource to help them do that. And so we did that and picked a finalist on that. An informational item is that the Clackamas County Sheriff's Department on September 9th, which is already passed, will be doing their K-9 training. They use our facility out on Roberts Road, and that went off, I understand, pretty well. In the emergency manager's activity report, we've talked about the meetings that we've had. The emergency manager is also now putting together an action item plan based upon the training that he's been receiving. And there's a bunch of other activities here that I won't go into. I think they're there for you to review. If you have any questions, you could ask me about those. We've continued to meet with CRWP, we being the general managers of the respective districts, to talk about alternate water supply discussions. That's going pretty well. And I think most of you have been notified that on October 4th, the CRWP is hosting a tour of the Clackamas River. The two of you have indicated that you'd like to attend, and so those reservations have been met. And then the last item I have that's not in my report is the Chamber of Commerce, North Clackamas Chamber of Commerce, is holding a State of the County luncheon later, what is it, this month, I believe. 24th, or 24th or 29th, I can't remember which day it is.
24.
Yeah, 24. And so if any of the others of you either want to do the tour or attend the luncheon, if you could let us know ASAP, that would be helpful. And that's the end of my report.
So, when are we gonna do rates?
Rates are going to be at the work session.
It's coming.
Yeah, the
Oh,
one,
good, okay.
you know, the apartment residential.
Yeah, right,
yeah.
okay. I'm just trying to figure out how much time.
Yeah, we're waiting for you.
Do we have any public comment on the management report? Seeing none, we'll go on to commission business. Is everybody okay on the new date for the board meeting for October? Yes. That's 16th. Good then, by dinner. Everybody okay on the second work session? Okay, we certainly get your expenditure reports in. With that.
One question is that the October work session, do you guys want to set that date now?
I think I have a tentative.
Yeah, we put a tentative out there.
It's on the calendar.
It's calendared for the 20th as a tentative date, which is the third Monday of the month, which is what we normally do.
But you moved the board meeting, so.
This is true.
Just a thought.
Which is on the 16th.
Right.
So what are you asking? Do we want to have a work session before that or later on?
That's the question.
Okay.
No, the question should be, if we have a board meeting on the 16th,
Right.
will you be ready on the 20th for the work session?
We
That's what
can't-
happens when we screw you guys up.
This is true.
That's
We
what
could
I'm
move
worried
it,
about.
we could move it to the 27th, which would give you an extra week. Would that work?
Yeah.
I don't know.
As far as I'm concerned, we can. I mean,
Yeah, fine with me
Okay.
too. I just.
I
when
see
we-
heads
when we
going up
back-
and down, so that's probably a good thing. The 27th.
Would that, if that makes it easier for staff to be prepared, I don't know.
I mean, after the report.
Monday the 27th instead of the 20th? Be fine.
All right, 27th it is.
Would you send out just the calendar, because I'm now living and breathing that.
A revision?
Yes, please, and I'll just insert that as
Okay.
I
email.
said we're adjourned, so.
Are you